Rob Taylor did not expect to have a realization with his wife Christy that their midlife careers should involve starting their own distillery. Well, it did, but it was also a continuation of what he learned on the farm. Support your neighbors and be good to people. Hi, I'm Dave Price, and this is the American Farmland Owner Podcast. Rob has done a variety of things. He grew up on a farm, he trained as a diesel mechanic, spent quite a while in sales, served as an Iowa state legislator, but Revelton Distillery in Osceola, Iowa may be one of his biggest sources of professional pride yet. Now, speaking of sources, local sourcing is one of the foundations of Revelton, and we will get into why during this conversation. But first, let's take this farm boy back to the farm. All right, Mr. Farm Boy, let's go back and talk about your roots, because you've been tied to ag your entire life.
I have. I've been an odd individual where growing up, my dad was the dean of the diesel and ag department at Des Moines Area Community College and taught diesel fuel injection. So we had a house I grew up on the south side of Des Moines during the week. And then we actually had two family farms down here in Clark and Warren County. We had our Taylor family farm just south of New Virginia that my Taylor family, my grandparents, sold that when I was a little kid, 3 or 4 years old. And then we had my mom's side of the family that had a family farm here in Clark, just south of Osceola. And so when I wasn't at school during the week, I was farming nights and weekends as soon as I could drive. I didn't do a lot of sports, played a little bit of baseball, and that was about it. And at the end of class, I'm beat-feeding down here to feed cattle, put up hay, put in corn beans, and take them out in the fall. So I was a guy that grew up with one foot in urban Iowa and the other foot firmly planted in rural Iowa.
How do you think that kind of shaped your head as you went on into your adult working life with those multiple backgrounds like that?
Well, fast forward to when I was in the legislature, I was known for two things: being the most fiercely independent Republican up there at the time, because I like to work with both sides as much as I possibly could. And the other thing is that there was always a divide between rural versus urban issues.
Sure.
And I was usually stuck right in the middle of those, being able to see both sides and trying to be a bridge builder and not a bridge burner, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be a lot of those today. But so, having roots in both sides of our agrarian economy, as well as, an up and coming sprawling urban district, I was able to see both sides of the issues. And I've prided myself of that, growing up clear through high school and college and into my adult professional life, and now having Revelton Distilling Company down here in Osceola, Iowa.
And we'll get into Revelton. You have, though, kept your hand in farming, maybe a smaller degree than as your family did years back, but you still have a hand in it.
I still do have a hand in it. I just have a small 25 acres down here that was the remnants of what was left of my grandfather's farm that my sister and I own together, and I still maintain what's left of it. And we have a good relationship with the farmer that owns all the property around me, and I help him and he helps me to the point where, look, I would love to combine. It's one of my very favorite things to do, but I don't have to own $1 million combine anymore. I have 4 farmers that come down, that call me up at harvest season and say, "Hey, I can't find any help. Will you come to the combine for the day?" And I'm like, hell yeah, I will. And on top of that, I don't have to own it. So heck yeah.
Describe the feeling sitting on that combine. What's that like?
You know what? It is one of the most serene and peaceful experiences until you pick up a rock and it's somebody else's combine. Yeah. But it's just a very peaceful environment, and I could sit on a combine 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. And especially the combines that they run today compared to what I ran when I was a kid. Heck, some of those John Deere and Case IH combines now in the cab are cheaper, or they're quieter than my Chevy pickup truck. So um, it's really peaceful and serene. And you never forget where you came from. And being a farm kid, it's one of those things that you get in your blood. And only farm people and farm kids specifically understand this, that when they go away from the farm, no matter what they do, a CEO of a company, blue collar worker, white collar worker, even stay-at-home moms and dads, at the end of the day, many of them would sell everything to come back and be on the farm again and be able to raise crops and livestock and have that peaceful and serene life.
All right, we're going to get into the baby that you've surrounded yourself with here. You've also dabbled in the bee business just a little bit, right? Like what was it that enticed you into that?
Well, I think it was 2013. My wife, my partner in our distillery here was a full-time physician. I was an elected official at the time, and I was teaching at a couple universities, a community college, running a petroleum company, doing a whole bunch of different stuff. And we're laying in bed on a Friday night, and the Iowa State Ag Extension Office catalog had come in, and we're laying in bed checking our mail, and we open up the Ag Extension Office flyer. And there's a beekeeping class in Sheraton, Iowa that starts at that time in February. Well, the legislature starts in January. So we're right in the middle of stuff. And Christy and I were seeing very little of each other at the time. And we thought, well, what would we like to do maybe on a Friday night, date night? So we picked beekeeping and we drove to Sheraton for 6 weeks in the Ag Extension Office to learn how to be beekeepers. And we not only sucked us in, but we sucked our younger two boys in, which at the time were in junior high and elementary school. So they came down with us on a Friday night for 6 weeks to learn beekeeping, which then became the foundation for one of the first companies that my kids formed, which was the Iowa Honey Company. So they picked the name, they helped pick out and worked with the Secretary of State's office to incorporate, which was an LLC at the time. And they also helped us with our bees and harvesting as well. So it was really a family thing that we did for nearly 6 years. And then, and we're still in it a little bit. It becomes a feeder company for this baby here. But my kids are gone off to college now and they're buried with things. So just like the farm, when your kids leave, somehow you end up taking things over. And I don't have as much time as I want for my bees. So we went from 53 hives at our peak to down to about 5 hives right now.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the reason for that. And for those of you who are watching this conversation, it is right behind him because Rob is talking to us from Revelton. What is Revelton all about? And how was this born?
Well, again, my wife and I were looking for things as I get a little more gray hair, and life starts passing you by. You're like, what is it that we'd like to do together to go to the next phase of our lives? And my wife is still practicing in medicine right now. But as we were talking back in, that 2012, 2013 time when we started the Iowa Honey Company, we had an opportunity to go to Kentucky. I bought a live auction package from the Iowa Corn Dog Kickoff, which is the fundraiser for the Iowa State Fair. And it was a week-long event in which whoever bought the package could go down to this little town in the middle of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail called Bardstown, Kentucky. So we bid on it. We won it. And it just so happened that week was also the week of my wife's birthday. So we went down, traveled down, didn't know a doggone thing about whiskey or bourbon, but it looked beautiful. So we spent a week down there going to all of the big and many of the small kitsch distilleries all over Kentucky. And in a week, we're kind of social butterflies. We got to know Jimmy Russell, the master distiller from Wild Turkey. We got to meet Jim Rutledge, the master distiller from Four Roses. And then there was a little distillery in Bardstown, Kentucky called Willits, which at the time was about the size of my distillery. Since then, They become the largest craft distillery in the state of Kentucky. And we got to know Drew and Janelle Colesfiend. We had so much fun that week that we kept going back every year. And in 2015, I had an opportunity to go to dinner as an elected official with Jimmy Russell, the master distiller from Wild Turkey. And we're at dinner, and he couldn't remember my name at the time, so he just called me Iowa. And he sits back and folds his arms, and he says, and he's probably 81 or 2 at the time. He goes, "Mr. Iowa," he says, "I got a question for you." I said, "What's that, Mr. Russell?" He said, "What is the largest distillery state in the United States?" What do you think I said? Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Well, Mr. Elected Official, let me school you. It's not Kentucky. It's Iowa. You all in Iowa make 10 times more ethanol than Kentucky and Tennessee combined, but you all turn it into fuel. You're using the best corn in the world to turn that into fuel." At Wild Turkey, we buy, he says, "Do you know a little company called Kent Feeds?" And I said, "Yes, sir. Everybody in Iowa knows Kent Feeds." He goes, "Yeah, we buy Kent Feed corn, both from Iowa as well as seed corn down here, because they have some of the finest corn in the world. And we make fine bourbon and whiskey out of it." And that became a kind of a catalyst for Christy and I to start talking about, well, why aren't there more distilleries in Iowa? That then fast tracked into, why don't we start a distillery in Iowa and source all of our corn and all of our rye right here from Southern Iowa, which is what we did.
So, why was that so important to you to use as much local as possible?
Well, look, when it comes to crafts, when it comes to food, when it comes to drinks, beer, wine, spirits, there has been a good craze for a number of years, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon, of buy local, support local. Well, if you're going to buy local, support local, you better be able to back up what you're saying, right? So in November 1st of 2019, we broke ground for Revelton Distilling Company. So we spent 3 years with our business plan and getting it fine-tuned. We built it in 11 months over the pandemic. Gosh, who knew that would come on?
Yeah.
Opened December of 20, and in that building, in that phase of opening our doors, I started talking to our local farmers and the people that I knew around down here that I'd grown up with, and my parents and my grandparents and aunt and uncles all knew, and told them what we were about ready to do. And everybody wanted to partner with us. So I went out and found 3 really, really great farmers that had great grain. They had great farming techniques. They had a lot of conservation built into their farming. And with one farmer, I buy all of my corn from him. I inspect his grain bins once or twice a year to make sure that we're always getting high quality grains, and he doesn't have a contamination in his grain bins. My other farmer, I buy all of my rye from, Ray Gasser out of Lenox. We buy 100% of our rye from him, and his son Chris, who is also a partner in the farm, him and Shannon, is deathly allergic to rye dust. So I made a deal with Ray. Here's the deal, Ray. I'm going to buy all my rye from you. The only thing that I want from you is that when you harvest that in July, I get to run your second combine. And he's like, well, how much is that going to cost me? And I smiled and I said, Ray, as a matter of fact, I'm going to pay you because I want to buy all your rye from you. And it's been a great partnership. Rich Johnson is who we buy all of our corn from in Grand River. And then the farmer that grinds all of our grain and then takes our spent mash back to his cattle farm to feed to his cattle in the form of a corn milkshake is Galen and Patty Jimerson in Grand River, and they have a farm, Deer Run Ranch. So those 3 farms have been integral into not only establishing Revelton Distilling Company, but also having the foundation to know that we can support them, they can support us, and they will grow as we grow.
What about barrels, containers, glassware, all of that? How do you do that?
So all of our barrels are sourced from Kentucky.
Okay.
Look, Kentuckians have been doing this for 200
They know what they're doing.
250 years. We're not trying to reinvent what they do. All we're trying to do is bring a little bit of Kentucky to Iowa. So all of our barrels come from Kentucky. They're also sourced, the wood sourced from Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, and some in Minnesota as well. We have a tree ring approach to just about everything that we do. So what I try and do when I try and source anything is the first question I ask is, can we buy it in Osceola? And if the answer is yes, we buy it in Osceola.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a little bit higher price than in Des Moines, but at the end of the day, the only way that we're going to build our businesses in Osceola is sourcing. And you know what? If things are too expensive, talk to the owner. Try and figure out a way to make it work instead of just saying, "Nah, I'm going to go to Des Moines and buy it." Nothing against Menards, but why am I going to buy construction material at Menards when I've got a great um, store down here in Osceola? So we try and source in Osceola first. If we can't get it in Osceola, then we'll tree ring it out and go, does Clark, Warren, or Decatur County have what we need? And if the answer is yes, we buy it. If not, then can we source in Iowa? If not, then can we source in the Midwest? If not, then we do nationally. And then fast forwarding to our bottles and our corks, we get all of our bottles and corks from India, and Italy, and where Christy and I have some personal relationships with some folks, and we've got to know people in those countries, which has also helped us with value-added agriculture, which, as you know, I just came back from Italy here. Christy and I did after about 10 days, spending some time with our Italian investors who brought us around to people that they knew in the industry to see what we can do with as a reciprocal exchange. We buy our bottles and corks from them. They buy our bourbon and rye whiskey and mulberry gin from us, and we send it to Italy, which is what we're working on right now.
So how has all this tariff stuff impacted you, or have you stayed clear of that?
I think the tariff stuff impacts everyone. At the end of the day, it's both a good and a bad thing because it's impacting everyone. The unfortunate part is the only person at the end of the day that pays for the tariffs is the consumer. So I'm hoping that some of this craziness and this the best way for me to be able to put it is this adolescent toddler behavior between our administration and other administrations throughout the world. Hopefully things at some point in time will cool down and we'll have a cool head about us again. And I see these tariffs as temporary. These temporary tariffs will have to come back into check again, or we're going to crash our entire world economy. So how does it impact us right now? For the most part, this is part of the reason why we get our stuff from Italy and India right now with bottles and corks, because their tariffs are a lot less than China, which we never sourced our bottles from China. But interestingly enough, I just flew down to Mexico City and met with the second largest glass manufacturer in Mexico City. Had a wonderful relationship and meeting with them, and I think we're going to use them as a secondary source for making some of our bottles. Because last fall, when the longshoremen on the east and west coast were nearly ready to strike, it's the only time in the history of our business that I got very, very uncomfortable, because if we can't get our goods in and out from the ocean, that would have killed my business. So we figured out a way in which we could build a relationship on the North American continent with our Mexican partners to the south who make great product. And that way, if we did have a problem getting bottles from overseas, that we could then utilize this as a primary source out of Mexico. So, you try in business, you try and build redundancies into your business. And along the way, we're a relationship business. Build those relationships along the way as well.
So you got out of politics, but you didn't get out of politics.
You never get out of politics.
You're still impacted by it.
We are. But look, politics affects us in one way, shape, or form in every aspect of our life, and many times before life begins and after we die. So you know what? As a former ASE certified diesel mechanic, you got to get in there and figure out how it works. What makes the machine run, how to break the machine, how to fix the machine after it's broken. And when it comes to politics, it can be a wonderful business sometimes, and there's other times in which it can be a kind of nasty. But at the end of the day, you need to have a seat at the table. And I tell people all the time, especially in the farming world, if you don't have a seat at the table and you don't know what's going on in your local economy, your board of supervisors, your city council, if you've got a local city council, if you don't get to know your elected officials at the state and the federal level, you are at their mercy. But if you build a relationship with them, you're polite and cordial about it, doesn't matter what party you're in. Generally, elected officials today will really respond well to people that are polite and cordial, that have a point, and if you can show them the evidence as to why or why not something is working and help them understand that this is the challenge in a minute or less, then many times you can be a change agent, especially in rural Iowa, more than in urban Iowa, is what I've found. So I think it's really important that you're engaged.
So tell me if this is fair or not based on what you're saying here. You were both looking at, you're in Osceola, Iowa. You want to kind of build that out. You're trying to grow the community, both your enterprise and then everybody around you. But you also have your mind looking internationally, I would expect, right? I mean, as you want to see Revelton continue to grow. So you got to be balancing a lot of stuff here, right?
We do. See all this gray hair?
Highlights.
Yeah, exactly. 5 years ago, it was a lot darker. My wife says she likes it this way more.
Good. That's what matters.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still trying to grow into my gray hair, but look, at the end of the day, our goal was to bring Revelton to a rural ag economy, and it just made sense. I mean, down here, Osceola is a population of 5,500 people, and if you count people off by twos down here, I'm related to all the twos. Welcome to Southern Iowa. So, relationships matter, and family matters down here. So for us, it just was natural for us to build our business from the very beginning in Clark and Decatur County, where they desperately need new stuff. Where I live now, and have lived for 22 years. After I leave here, Christy and I live in Dallas County, West Des Moines, which is where I represented people in the legislature, and it's 37 miles from here. So I still continue to have 1 foot in urban Iowa and 1 foot in rural Iowa every day. But look, West Des Moines, Waukee, Clive, Ankeny, Urbandale, they don't need something new and shiny because they get new and shiny every day. And it's nothing against them. But rural Iowa needs new and shiny. They need growth. They need hope. They need employees, and they need an employer that understands the rural lifestyle and the importance of, hey, Rob, I'm not going to be here this week because I've got to plant corn. You know what? In Ankeny, Iowa, many times an employer doesn't understand that. We understand that. I've lived that life, and that's what's really important to us in helping grow and thrive the 27 employees that we currently have at Revelton Distilling Company. So we have virtually no turnover whatsoever. The only turnover that we've had, really, quite honestly, has been people that have tried to come from Des Moines and come down and work at Revelton in good faith. And then when fuel prices got up to $4 a gallon, they're like, look, we love you, but gas is expensive. Yeah. So we get it.
We've done this podcast for almost 2 years now. We're coming up on, it will be not too far from now. And I like talking to people who get this and prioritize this about any kind of ideas of what it will take to build out in our smaller communities. Now, we're both talking in Iowa, but this translates to states all over the country. And as you well know, Mr. Farm Boy, there are not nearly as many as there once was because we grow far more efficiently, we're bigger operations, and people have left the farm. You joked about your kids going off to college and they can't help with the bee business, but as you all know, farm families are dealing with this all over the place, right? And it's beyond the farm. The farm's got to work, but everything, all the ancillary and connected parts of it, housing, education, healthcare, other employment, all these things have to thrive. And where we talk in Iowa, we're talking 65, 70, between 65 and 70 of the 99 counties in the state have been shrinking in populations, and in many cases for decades. This can play out in many other similar states across the country. But what have you learned, whether it's from politics, from this family business at Revelton, what kind of things have you learned that it will take for us as a community to invest in so we can start growing some of these other communities?
Yeah. I'm gonna try and answer that question in about three different legs, and I apologize.
Okay.
I'm still a recovering politician, so if
Well,
it's
that
too
was a long question, so clearly I should have been in politics as long as it
so
took me to say
you've been in politics, buddy.
it.
If it gets too long, cut me off. But
You're fine.
so the first thing that I've learned is that you look for some of the universals. What does urban and rural Iowa need? And then what you do is you go out and you look at other communities that you've been, and Christy and I have been blessed to travel all over the U.S. and all over the world. And coming back from Italy and France just a week and a half ago, the interesting thing is in Italy and France, they're asking some of the same questions. What is it that we're going to do to grow our rural agrarian economies when you've got these big cities that are continuing to grow and grow and grow, some of which have some real blight? And interestingly enough, some of those urban people are desperately wanting to get out of the city and into the rural communities. Same issue that we have here. So look at the universals. What are the universal things that parents, kids, grandparents, and retirees look for? They're really three things. Number one is quality of life. Doesn't matter if you're in urban or rural Iowa, you got to be looking for quality of life. So what brings that quality of life to the individual? Well, in today's world, it's a few things. It is access to education. And not only access to education, but access to a high quality education, because universally, people here or people in Europe, people in India, people in South America and Canada, all around the world, they understand that the best way to lift yourself out of poverty and at least be in a middle class family is through education. K through 12 is absolutely essential. And then, I came from the trades as a diesel mechanic, but I have a master's in business. That took me 12 years to get after I was turning wrenches. I'm a huge proponent of the trades, but at the end of the day, you need to have some sort of education past high school to be able to support yourself. So that's important in quality of life. Secondly, how is that education delivered? I have been a huge proponent for years and years and years. And sometimes I have to be careful in rural Iowa when I think big, because, but that's what it's going to take. When it comes to delivery of education, it's going to be delivered differently than it ever has been in the past, which means what we're doing right now. Dave, 10 years ago, you and I would have been meeting live and in person.
That's right.
Right? And quite honestly, I still prefer it that way. I'm still old school.
Same.
But it is what it is. We have the opportunity to connect ourselves globally, right? Through these little cameras and computers. Why in the heck aren't we doing that? So when you're talking about education, how is it that you can connect people virtually, both K through 12, higher education, and even retirees virtually, so that people can learn a new skill, a new trade, communicate, and help understand different cultures, people, and different skill sets? So I'm a huge proponent of high-speed internet. It has to happen. It is the electricity. It's the electrical lines in the end of the 19th and 20th century that were always in urban Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa, Council Bluffs, Quad Cities, Iowa City. They were the first cities to get electricity. Then when rural Iowa started to connect, they started to grow. The same thing will happen with high-speed internet. It needs to be our number one priority in the state, because if you don't have internet and high-speed internet specifically in rural Iowa, you will die. I'm a firm believer of it. Even when it comes to farm equipment. If you've got a group of investors or an ag dealer that's looking to come into rural Iowa, one of the very first things that they're going to look at is access to high-speed internet. Because when you're working on these complex combines and tractors and trucks today, you need to have access to high-speed internet to do things as simple as updating the computers on those to be able to do repairs. And if you don't have those, they will not locate in your area. It's as simple as that.
Right.
Lastly, what you have to have in for a quality of life is you have to have a place for people to eat, shop, and stay, to be able to experience your community, both locally and then have tourists come in. So those really are the three things that I'm a huge, huge believer in, which is promoting education and high quality education. Secondly, we have to get high speed internet, no matter what it looks like and how much it costs, because if we're not growing, we're dying. And thirdly, that quality of life has to have eating, shopping, and staying built into your rural communities, or people have no reason to come into the community and spend money. Does that make sense?
Definitely, and got to get more people talking about this kind of stuff too. Otherwise, we're going to keep going backwards in too many communities.
Yeah. Look, there's the Pella Tulip Festival every year, and people come from all over the world now to go to Pella.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science when you go down there, and it's not a big community, but look at what they've done in that community. They've embraced high speed internet. They've embraced education, both K through 12 and higher education. They've embraced tourism, so they have some of the best restaurants and bars and meats down there that you'll ever have. And then they have this thing called the Pella Tulip Festival. So one of the things I started challenging Osceola at a couple of years ago is we did a workshop here out at Revelton about, our next 10-year master plan as a community. And I threw something out that really kind of threw them sideways. I said, Osceola, what's your thing? What are you known for? Some people said, we're known for the casino. Well, that's great for the casino community, but what else are we known for besides the casino? So I challenge people in rural Iowa that have their little local town somewhere, or big local town. What's your thing? Why should everybody from all over the community, all over the state, and then all over the nation or world, why should they come to your community and visit you, invest in you, and spend money? What's your thing? So my pitch now is, Osceola, come give us a shot.
What
I did there?
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
I was gonna wrap this up by letting you sing the praises of Revelton. You sort of did right there, but so let's flip that to close out. Let's flip it on you, Mr. Revelton Rob. What is your thing at Revelton?
People. It's that simple. It's people. If you don't have people, you have nothing. It's people and building those relationships. So when you come to Revelton, it doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter what you're wearing, it doesn't matter what you do.
Well, it may matter your age to some degree, right? On the low end.
Well, that's true. Yeah. We do meet the law. We don't serve to anyone under 21.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, to that point, our distillery is family friendly. There's 26 other distilleries in the state of Iowa that are family friendly as well. And we're also proponents of non-alcoholic drinks. So we make mocktails here. So we have people that either don't like alcohol or they don't drink alcohol for a number of reasons. They'll still come down to Revelton because they're treated well. They have a great time. We always have free live music on Saturdays from 4 to 7. And here's the coolest thing, Dave. We have a lot of people that bring their kids down on Saturdays because a lot of times it's the very first time that those kids have ever experienced live music. And here's the coolest thing about this. Those kids, when that band starts playing on our stage, they put down their phones, they put down their iPads. They're not interacting on the phone. They are watching and dancing around the place, enjoying music and listening and being part of this thing. So it's people. That's the most important thing.
Nice. All right. So when you wrap up tonight, if you want a drink, what is it?
Revelton single barrel bourbon.
There it is.
There, baby. So this has been my passion. This has been, we've got 3,000 barrels of this sitting out in our warehouse that we've made since May of 21. We had to wait 3 years before we released it. Now it's out. We're getting great accolades. There's a couple different proofs out there. So if I want something I want to drink neat, I'll drink it at 90 proof. We have another one at 100 proof that if I want to make an old fashioned, or if I want to put a rock on it and just sip on it, I like it at 100 proof.
Nice.
And it's 100% Iowa corn, 100% Iowa rye. And we just found a farmer now that is growing all of our barley in Osceola, Iowa. So a year from now, I'll be able to say we source 100% of all of our grain from Southern Iowa.
Always thinking local.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave. It's always great talking to you.
You can learn more about Rob Taylor and our profile piece about him in the American Farmland Owner newsletter. You can find profiles from thought leaders, the latest news, challenges, and opportunities for farmland ownership, operating, and investing. Find it now at AmericanFarmlandOwner.com. Thanks for listening, and thanks for caring about the future of our farmland.